Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast. It is the Sunday show, Atlanta Motor Speedway 2025. We are super speedway racing for the second week in a row. Stack in the back. See you guys next week. You made that joke last week, and it wasn't even a joke. It wasn't even funny. It's less funny now, and it's becoming more annoying. Yeah, I know. I understand. But that's the reality. This show shouldn't exist. It shouldn't. It should be extinct. It should be an email, a TLDR, like most DFS shows, to be quite honest. But this one in particular, you know what to do. Stack the drivers in the back. Why should I try to waste your time with making up some time-filling segment about, well, we could try to build the optimal lineup, and if Ryan Blaney or one of these elite Fords who showed a lot of speed control the race and work together as teammates and they get 20 dominator points or hog points, fast laps plus laps led, then they could be optimal. They could be. And also the many really good equipment in the back could survive chaos, carnage, or just get the right runs or just methodically move their way forward because they put more handling in their car this week, which is definitely a theme, could score 25 place differential points. 25 place differential points is, last time I checked, more than 20 hog points. And not since really 2022 have we seen drivers completely control a single file freight train. That was going to be a single file freight train at times, but we could also see plenty of cautions because the track is wearing out fast. It is becoming bumpy. You can make your decision. I'm stacking in the back. I'm going to build a winning lineup and not try to build the optimal lineup. Yeah, I hear the argument about, well, the guys that can build 150 lineups, they're going to be able to throw in a little bit of Blaney and Logano. Good for them. And they can afford to lose 120 contests, but have 25 that are good and they win the GPP. I get it. I understand. And as I suggested in the comments earlier this week, Walmart can lower all their prices and take a loss month after month, but their competitors can't, and their competitors go out of business, and then Walmart then can jack the prices up. It's just normal business, and that's normal business in DFS. The whales can afford to take the hit. That's just the reality. That's the game. Maybe you want to play single entry, maybe you want to play 3 entry, 20 entry, but anyway, I just hope that the guys I pick in the back survive the race, and maybe, just maybe, it's my day. Or maybe, just maybe, it's your day. But today, make sure you check out racefortheprize.com. That's where you can get access to the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet and all the tools and all the documents and all the files. All of the processes I'm running every day, trying to build things, make it better. It's not just a spreadsheet. $40 for March, and boy, are there a ton of races. So get that money over to me, PayPal, Venmo, Cash App. Keep on keeping on. Join the team, stay with the team, or $250 for the season. Never have to worry about chipping into the Mickey D's fund ever again. We'll play around with our projections. 50 is the typical cut line, but I believe the cut line is going to be much higher given the number of good cars that we have in the back that could not necessarily surprise during the race, but obviously show more speed than they did in qualifying. And if you listen to qualifying, then you heard Denny Hamlin before he went out there and ran say, I hope I am slow. And boy, was he slow. But he wants to have a better handling car at a track that seems to have changed a lot, at a track where handling is going to matter a little bit more. Now, in the end, that could, I mean, this is the same guy, though, that came out of the Daytona race and went on his typical rant on his podcast saying, too much drag in the car, you can't pass. And so then what does his team do? Looks like they put a lot more drag and downforce into his car. Now, again, Atlanta is a different beast than Daytona, and handling better may equate to being able to move through traffic better at Atlanta, given the differences here. So that should be stated. Either way, look, Hamlin, jamming in. Ty Gibbs, 73 fantasy points, jamming in. And one of the things you can do with the spreadsheet is really just go and try to be as conservative as possible. The odds of him winning Hamlin, that's pretty tough. But the odds of a top 10, not that hard. There he's at 64. If the typical cut line's 50, and we believe the line's going to be much higher, even if the line migrates north to 55 or 60, a top 10 is still pretty easy. Same thing, we punch in Gibbs. Much more probable rate of a top 10. He's a 63. LaJoy, maybe not as probable, but he definitely has been right there in the past at Atlanta. 10th, he's on the board. Obviously, you probably feel more comfortable with Gibbs and Hamlin, especially considering these guys will probably work together at the beginning. Also, you got Christopher Bell right up there going to work together. These guys all with a conservative projection of 10th. Well, they're starting 30th to 10th. It's a super speedway. I mean, you could really chalk anybody in for 5th place in reality. I'm just trying to be as conservative as possible to see like how easy it is for them to slide into the optimal lineup. And then the thing is, you just compare that to the probability rates. And you can go to DraftKings, look and see like what are the top 10, top 5 odds. Although I wouldn't put too much weight behind that. I think sportsbooks are guessing. But you can also look at the spreadsheet and look at the data. How often does this driver finish top 10, top 15 at a super speedway? And the thing that I would just do is real quick in your head say, all right, what's the probability of him getting a top 10? Hamlin. What's the probability of Ryan Blaney not just winning the race, but leading more than this? Because right here, if I give him 10 hog points, which we've seen the Dominator hog points kind of spread out a little bit at the front and not one guy lead the train. But if we get real aggressive and we go to 20, then he's at 65. What's more likely, a Denny Hamlin top 10 or a Ryan Blaney? And you can really stick anyone in here, because if we think that there's going to be one guy, if it's a build of 5 in the back and one guy up front, you could stick it in. You can play Blaney, Cindric, Logano, any of these guys. We'll just put Blaney for this consideration. Hamlin versus Blaney. Which is more likely? Hamlin top 10 or Blaney winning and absolutely controlling the race? Well, it's Hamlin top 10. Again, you could say Hamlin versus Cindric if Cindric ends up being the guy or Logano ends up being the guy. But either way, stacking the backer versus the lead packer. And we could just go through that right now. He's got to get to 20, really, to get to that 65-ish. 10, I don't think gets him in. And that's been about where we are. And that is also saying you can't lose any spots at the end. You got to win this race. You got to not fade at the end like we saw Cindric do last season. Because when you come down to those closing laps, that place differential is going to just suck some points away. All right, again, let's do, just run through the order. Gibbs, top 10 versus Blaney controlling the race. I would say Gibbs, top 10. I would even argue Corey LaJoy, top 10, more likely than one guy scoring 20 hog points. Stenhouse, a little less exciting, appealing. But again, his super speedway stats are there. Are they mercurial? Are they up and down? We saw what he did last week. He can be a clown or he can put on the crown. And if you're trying to win a GPP and you think that people may not want to touch Ricky, then don't be too picky and put him in your pool. Ross the Boss got those 2 runner-ups. We have seen Trackhouse really deliver at this racetrack, especially Daniel Suarez. I honestly, though, don't care too much. In the end, I just kind of wipe the slate clean, say it's a super speedway. Can he get it done? Can he get in a top 10? Absolutely. Can Christopher Bell get in the top 10? Absolutely. These are all viable options. I don't need to go to BJ and JJ. If you want to go crazy with the Cheese Whiz, go for it, but I'm not going to do it. No J's for me. Same thing with Cody Ware. Not going to go to Ware. I don't need to go to SVG. Should be fine. It could happen. If you want to be unique and daring, then go ahead. Throw in SVG. But I don't really need Van Gisbergen. I would like someone that's a little bit more experience at this style of racing. I don't really put too much weight behind that. But if I have so many options, then I'm going to do that. Suarez, as we've mentioned, has been awesome. The thing that I know, this is not a rational way of approaching it, but you may be thinking the same thing that I'm thinking. Are you thinking the same thing I'm thinking? He's running hot. How long can he run this hot? Can it keep happening? Track's different now. Maybe they won't have as much speed. I don't know. That's not really the right way to approach it. But we always look at it the other way. When we talk about Kyle Larson, it's got to turn around someday. He's got to catch a break at a super speedway someday, and that never happens. So maybe Daniel Suarez just wins at Atlanta until the end of time. But let's dial the projection down a little bit and see if 10's going to be good enough. So now as we get closer to the front, we're running a little bit of trouble. But you could argue that he could be more of a top 5 driver as he is starting close to the front and as he has demonstrated with his success in the past. He gets to 5, you're there. You go a little bit more conservative. 7, you're there. Really, it's just all these guys competing against each other. Who do you like? If they survive, you thrive. Let's dial Jones down to a little bit more acceptable 10th. He's still in your pool. Again, if the original cut line is 50, he gives you a little bit of savings. I don't know if you're necessarily going to need it, but don't mind that either. Don't mind Herbst. Clearly, you want to elevate all the drivers in the 30s. Everyone's going to play heavily the drivers in the 30s. Then they're going to kind of differentiate a little bit amongst these drivers. And in the end, these projections don't really matter. It's just who doesn't wreck, who finds a way to finish the race. If they find a way to finish inside the top 10, whoever amongst this crew probably is going to make or break the show. You know, the reality is people will play all 6 of these, 4 or 5 of these guys, and it won't matter. Whichever ones survive at the end are going to be there. And then maybe what happens is the 2 drivers from this 20 pack that end up squeaking out of top 5 are the ones. And you can make an absolute solid argument for every single one of these drivers. No doubt about it. We know Suarez's stats. We've seen what Jones has done at super speedways before. If you remember back in 2023, where he made that amazing run at the end of the Atlanta race. It might have been fall 2022. I can't remember. Where he passed like 12 cars. It was phenomenal. You can find it on YouTube. I know Herbst doesn't have as much experience, but he's got plenty of Xfinity experience in super speedway packages. And if you really want to make a strong case for racing super speedways, I would say you get better reps at the Xfinity series at super speedways than you do in the trucks or the Cup, and Herbst has plenty of those. Probably tougher to go for Hocevar, but he's just a solid quality driver and proves himself every week. You know, you don't love him, but he's there. Briscoe, JGR, Toyota. It's got his teammates going to be coming up right behind him. Sure, he hasn't done great at Atlanta, but it's a super speedway. This is a new team, new ride. No problem there. Maybe you get a little less on Michael McDowell, although he did get extra reps in a truck race again and looked decent. But it isn't a front row Ford, so he doesn't quite have the elite speed that he has had in the past. But I don't think Aspire Chevy is a slug by any means. We don't really love Cole Custer, so he would probably be at the bottom of the list. But then that means if he's at the bottom of the list and he's starting a little bit closer to the front, and you're really trying to be different and attack drivers that are not completely proliferating pools, then Cole Custer may be the way to go. Same thing with John Hunter Nemechek. Plenty of super speedway experience. No real worries about that ride. Justin Haley. I mean, you look at his optimals right there. 7 times he's been optimals just in the Cup Series. And we know that he has a handful of wins, or several wins, in the Xfinity Series. Ty Dillon's where you start to think, are you getting a little too cute? But there were times last week where Ty Dillon looked pretty good. He ended up finishing 14th, was halfway decent in his dual race. Don't really mind Ty Dillon either if you're really trying to get different. But again, this is where we have the conversation about where you draw your line in the sand. Where do you want to start and stop with your pool? It's a little different than Daytona, where you can have a hard line saying, I'm just giving you guys 20th back, and I'm stacking completely in the back. Whereas at Atlanta, we have seen drivers inside the teens score optimal days. And so I am not going to definitively say, just give me 20 on back. I don't mind Chase Elliott starting and finishing first. He can definitely do that. Can he podium? He absolutely can. And get you to 60. And that's right where we need to be. And I'm not really worried about min cashing in this scenario. Whereas at Daytona, maybe you just don't want the guys that are going to get a bunch of negative place differential. I don't foresee half of the drivers getting knocked out of this race like you do at a Daytona or a Talladega, where if you just simply stack in the back and half of your team doesn't make it, and your opponents, half of their team doesn't make it either, but they started guys close to the front, and their half that didn't finish just were like sandbags pulling their team down. That can be a very good cash strategy at Daytona and Talladega. I don't necessarily like that approach for Atlanta. So here we are, Chase Elliott, 7 times optimal. We know what he is capable of at Super Speedway, home track, won in 2022. Fine by me. Tyler Reddick, fine by me. Kyle Larson, love it. I hope it scares people away. I hope him starting 17th scares people away. Why not? You're going to tell me Kyle Larson can't finish 5th, 4th, win this race? Why not? No one is going to own him. No one is going to pick him. He can get you 16 place differential points. And he's definitely going to go low on. You very rarely get an opportunity for low ownership Kyle Larson. William Byron, we know he just comes out on fire at the beginning of seasons now. And same thing. Look, we got all these Hendrick guys right here next to each other. They can all work together. You got quite a few Chevys right up here up front that could work together. Get to a safe spot. Once we get up here to Austin Dillon, I'm not really all that interested. Not interested. We know Bubba has been really good, and he should have had a better finish last fall. Track where he could run better or run well. I just don't need to go there because this is DFS, and we're trying to maximize place differential points. And as we get to the top 10, I don't want them. Just don't want them. I just think the probability of that just mass amount of drivers starting in the back, you run this race 1,000 times, these guys are just going to score a bunch of points. And maybe occasionally one guy controls the race. But I think the odds are in favor of just taking the guys in the back, the most likely scenario. Thanks for joining me. Hopefully that was helpful. RaceForThePrize.com. That's where you can get access to the sheet. So long, farewell. Trip of the Light's fantastic.